Good evening, everybody. Welcome back after Pesach. This week is Parshas Kedoshim. So we're going to explore a pasuk in Parshas Kedoshim. This week we will also take questions after the shiur. So if you have any question during the class, you can email it to weeklylearning@gmail.com. And after the shiur, Bli Neder, we will take a few questions from the audience and try to respond to the best of our ability. There is a pasuk in this week's Parsha, Parshas Kedoshim, Perek Yutes, Pasuk Tesvav. The Torah says, Leisasu avel b'mishpat, leisisa pnei dol, leiseder pnei gadol, b'tzedek tishpoit amisecha. Don't do injustice during a court case. Do not appease the face of the poor man. Do not beautify the face of the great, the wealthy man. B'tzedek tishpoit amisecha, with justice shall you judge your friend. So the Gemara in Masechta Shavuos brings two explanations. Masechta Shavuos, Daf Lamed Amud Aleph. Two different interpretations of this pasuk. With justice you shall judge your fellow man. According to one opinion, this pasuk is a directive to judges. When a person comes to a judgment in a Jewish court, in a civil case, the judge has to treat the litigants equally. He cannot allow one of them to speak for a long time and the other one he'll cut off. One of them to sit and one of them to stand, because this creates an unequal feeling and will perhaps make one of them feel inferior during the court case. So that's one interpretation in the Gemara. Your judgment towards your fellows, towards your friends, should be with justice, b'tzedek. And then the Gemara gives a second explanation, that the verse is directed at every Jew. And its meaning is, as Rashi also quotes, Haveidon es chavercha lekaf schus. You must judge your fellow man favorably, giving him the benefit of the doubt. So here we have a commandment in Torah, according to the second interpretation, B'tzedek tishpoit amisecha, with justice shall you judge your friend. What does it mean, b'tzedek? B'tzedek tishpoit is, you should assume that he or she is just. Tishpoit amisecha, how should you judge your fellow human being? Don't judge them initially negatively. Rather, b'tzedek, give them the benefit of the doubt. Assume that they wanted to be just. They were behaving out of positive, productive, and ethical intentions. That is how you should judge your fellow human being. The Mishnah then repeats this in Pirkei Avos, Havedanas kol adam lekaf schus. You should judge every human being favorably, giving them the benefit of the doubt. This mitzvah, which according to Rashi, and according to the one interpretation in Gemara and Shavuos, and one interpretation in Rashi on the pasuk, is then a biblical commandment. It's not only a nice thing to do, it's not only a pious thing to do, a unique type of behavior, but rather a mitzvah in Torah, a commandment in the Torah, that when we look at another person who behaves in a way that we feel, perhaps justifiably, is wrong. They do an act, they say a word, they engage in an activity, they respond in a way that authentically is unjust. They did something wrong. We can view them now in two ways. We can assume that they knew that what they were doing or saying or plotting or engaging in, they knew it was wrong, they knew it was evil, they knew it was negative, and they did it nonetheless. In other words, they're bad people, or they have serious evil in them that is dominating their lives. Or we can develop another attitude. We can give them the benefit of the doubt. we can assume in our minds, we can tell ourselves, they mean well. In their perception, in their perspective, this is the right course. This is the just way to go about it. They really feel they're doing the right thing. They did not have ill intentions. They were not plotting evil. They're just doing the best they know to do in this situation, and from their perspective, they want to be just. Perhaps they're making a mistake. Perhaps they don't see the full picture. Perhaps they have been misinformed, or whatever. So the Torah says, give people the benefit of the doubt. And it's this mitzvah that I want to analyze this evening from different perspectives and see how it applies to our lives also pragmatically. Often, we perceive this mitzvah of giving people the benefit of the doubt as something that is transcendent. It's aloof. It's beyond most of us. Because the real person, living in the real world, dealing with real people, knows better. He or she constantly sees people who are obnoxious, who are self-centered, who are egocentric, who just do bad things or say bad things. So it seems like almost a dream wish to demand or to persuade or to influence people to judge every person favorably. But when we look at our sources, when we study the literature of Torah, the literature of Musar, of Jewish ethics, of Kabbalah, of Chassidus, of Medrash, we learn that in addition to this being a mitzvah that Torah tells us to do, in addition to that, there are three major benefits and very pragmatic benefits when we make it a habit of judging people favorably. Number one, when you learn to judge people favorably and give them the benefit of the doubt, see the schus in them, the merit, judge them meritoriously, rather than the opposite of meritoriously. First of all, you yourself live a much more serene and happier and more joyous life. You're not so bitter. You're not angry. When you go to shul, or you go to your workplace, or in your home, or in the street, or wherever it is, and you see a person's behavior and you assume that they're acting negatively with the knowledge that this is negative and they have an ill or evil intent, if you're a human being, especially if you're sensitive and you're emotional, it's difficult to bear. So you come home, you're bitter, you're angry, you're depressed, you're enraged. If you learn to judge people favorably, you may still be perturbed by the action, but for yourself, you remain much more level-headed, much more serene, much more focused, more productive, and more human within yourself. Number two, even deeper. When you judge people favorably, you can mend the situation or the behavior far swifter, and you can be much more effective. If you feel that what he or she did was not only wicked, but they meant it to be wicked, they actually did not mean well. They knew what they were doing is wrong and they wanted to do it. You're naturally very angry at them. How could you not be? So when you approach them and you tell them how wrong this behavior was, the natural instinct of the other person is to create a defense mechanism and to fight back. It becomes a confrontation usually, or very often, and nothing is accomplished. You're angry, they're now angry, or they're defensive. You're rebuking them, they can't listen to you, and nothing changes. But if you genuinely believe that they had a good intention, they were just misinformed, or they simply did not understand something or appreciate something, when you approach them and try to mend the situation, you will usually be far more effective, as we see practically. Which means that if you are really bothered by what they did, The best thing to do is to judge them favorably, because if you're truly bothered by the action, the best way to eliminate such action in the future is by judging them favorably. Thus, when you approach them or you send somebody to approach them, it is likely to have much more productive effects and likely to accomplish much more and much faster than if you're harboring a grudge and a feeling that here we are dealing with a bad guy. So if you're really bothered by it, if you really want change, the best way actually to change it is to judge this person favorably. And then when you approach them, there is a sincerity and a purity and an authenticity that they feel from you, that you're not looking down at them and you're not trying to sting them or to stab them or to eliminate them or to put them down. You're genuinely trying to fix a situation that they may have not been aware of. You're looking at them as good people. You're looking at this individual as a good, moral, decent, mensched human being. So the way he will listen or she will listen to your criticism and your words of chastisement or rebuke are far more different. This is human nature. And then there is a third component. When you judge somebody favorably, you define how you will be judged and how you are judged presently in heaven. There is the famous commentary of the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov quotes the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, Nifrayin min ha'adam midaitoi v'shaloi midaitoi. This, by the way, this interpretation of the Baal Shem Tov, its origin is in Likutei Maharan. Reb Nachman of Breslov quotes it in the name of the Baal Shem Tov, and that's the source of this interpretation. He was, of course, a great-grandson of the Baal Shem Tov, and he quotes it in Likutei Maharan. The Rebbe in Likutei Sichos brings this idea from the Baal Shem Tov in the name. The source is Likutei Maharan of Reb Nachman. So the Baal Shem Tov asks, what is the meaning of the Mishnah that Hashem pays back a person midaitoi from his knowledge, v'shaloi midaitoi, not from his knowledge. Midaitoi means he is aware of it, and shaloi midaitoi is unaware of it. So the Baal Shem Tov explains a fascinating thing. It's based on another question. In Pirkei Avos it says, you have to be aware in whose presence are you going to give a din and a cheshbon. Din means a verdict, and cheshbon means a calculation. Which comes first? First comes a cheshbon, a calculation, and that's followed by din, by the verdict. But in the Mishnah we have first the word din, a judgment, and then cheshbon, then a calculation. So the Baal Shem Tov explained that after 120 years, when a Jew comes before the heavenly tribunal, they don't just give out a verdict for his or her life. They present to him another person's life. They present to him or to her the biography of another human being who had a very different life, with their challenges and their struggles and their virtues and their mitzvahs and their sins. And they ask this Jew for his or her opinion. And this Jew gives his or her verdict about the other person. Now what he didn't realize is that in that verdict, he is not giving a verdict about somebody else. He's giving a verdict about himself. Because afterwards it proves that this situation in a similar way applies to his life as well. So the way he defines the other person is the way he's ultimately defining himself. So after he gives out a din, then comes the cheshbon of his life. This is the meaning, Nefrayim min ha'adam midaitoi v'shaloi midaitoi. They don't exact punishment from a person, shaloi midaitoi. It's all midaitoi. He agreed. Every person decides what shall be his punishment, what shall be his reward, what shall be his destiny, what shall be her fate. It's all midaitoi. Daitoi means it's with your consent. Why is it midaitoi? Because I was asked. You were asked. And you said the case. You gave the verdict. It's still shaloi midaitoi because he or she doesn't know that they're giving a verdict about themselves. And the truth is, we have a source for this in the Tanakh itself, the story of David HaMelech. After David HaMelech consorted with Bathsheba, who was the wife of Uriah HaChiti. So although technically the Gemara says, let's call David, get Chris's Kaisav Liyisht. Somebody who went out to the war of the house of David before he went to war, he gave his wife a divorce so that she can remarry. So Uriah HaChiti was sent to the front, so Bathsheba was divorced. Nonetheless, relative to the standards of David HaMelech, it was an unethical behavior to consort with Bathsheba, and hence Nathan the prophet, Nasan HaNavi, comes to David HaMelech and confronts him in the name of Hashem. But he didn't confront him about what David HaMelech did. As the story goes in the Navi and the prophets, he tells David HaMelech a story about a poor man who has nothing but a little sheep, and the wealthy man who has everything and comes and takes away the little sheep from the poor man, and he tells David HaMelech, what is your opinion of this wealthy man who snatches that only possession that the poor man had? And David HaMelech says he should certainly die, and Nasan HaNavi says, this is what you did. So who gave the verdict for David HaMelech? David gave it, nobody else gave it. The Baal Shem Tov says this thing that happened with David HaMelech happens to every person throughout their life and in the next world. So by divine providence, we see different situations in life. We get to see different people in different circumstances. Every one of us is privy to see a few episodes each day. None of us can see everything. Each of us, the place we live and the people we meet and the communities we're part of and the families we are part of, we get to see different events and make judgments. Says the Baal Shem Tov, remember, you're making a verdict about another person, you're also defining yourself. And the reason you were showing this, perhaps, might be to be able to give heaven the verdict for yourself. The way I define you is essentially the way I'm defining myself in a different form, in a different set of circumstances, a different behavior, but the principle remains the same. And that's what the Gemara says in Masechta Shabbos, Daf Kuf Chav Zayin Amid Beis, that the way we judge others is the way we're judged. It's not just a random thing. Rather, we are judged that way because we judged others that way. What is the meaning in this? Why did the Baal Shem Tov say this? The Rebbe once explained in a Farbrengen in Yud Shvat Tavshin Chaf, Yud Shvat 1960, that essentially this principle of the Baal Shem Tov is essential. It's indispensable to the entire theme of the Baal Shem Tov who revealed Chassidus. Because through Chassidus, the Baal Shem Tov revealed the endless depth and extraordinary greatness of a Jewish soul, to the point that the Jewish soul is rooted in the deepest reality of Hashem Yisbarach Kavayachal himself. Hence the Baal Shem Tov is saying you should know that nobody in the world is a master over the destiny and the fate of a Jew. Even when the Jew passes away and comes to heaven, no angel in the world, no force in the world as heavenly and celestial as it is, has the power to give out a verdict over the fate of a Jew. Why? Because the Jew is intimately connected with Hashem himself, transcending all of the angelic beings, all of the levels, including the heavenly court and the heavenly tribunal, etc. Thus, only the Jew himself or herself has the power to define their fate and destiny. Ultimately, only you can define who you really are. You have the freedom and the choice and the liberty to define who you are and what your fate will be from within your very essence. So therefore, even though the Jew has to be judged, nobody can judge him. Only he can judge himself. How can he judge himself? He's biased. By judging others, he judges himself. And on this theme, the Eitzer HaChaim, Sefer Eitzer HaChaim, brings an extraordinary story of the Baal Shem Tov. The story goes like this. It's in Eitzer HaChaim, Parshas Kedoshim, and in Eitzer Chesed, in chapter 4, Perek Dalet. One of the students of the holy Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov spent Rosh Hashanah by his Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov. He was standing in shul and davening. on this great day, the first day of the year, when we coronate Hashem as our King. In the middle of davening, the container that contained tobacco used to smell to snuff fell down. So this student bent down and lifted the container and snuffed the tobacco, what we call in Yiddish, ashmek tabak. Et ashmeget on the tabak. He sniffed the tobacco. He smelled the tobacco. A friend of his, who was also a student of the Baal Shem Tov, he was from the Chevraya Kadisha, from the holy group of the Baal Shem Tov, was standing there and he observed this scene. And he became very angry that a student of the holy Baal Shem Tov, in other words, a man of great spiritual value and integrity, in middle of davening on Rosh Hashanah, interrupts his davening, interrupts his intimate moments with Hashem. Why? In order to be able to smell tobacco. In order to be able to sniff tabak. This student who became very angry was also on a great spiritual level, and the Baal Shem Tov saw that as a result of his sense of ire on the other student who sniffed the tobacco in the middle of davening, a decree went out that the student who sniffed the tobacco should pass away that year. The Baal Shem Tov began creating a commotion in heaven, but nothing helped. All the lamentations and prayers and demonstrations of the Baal Shem Tov were ineffective until it came the night of Hoshana Rabbah. Hoshana Rabbah is, of course, the 7th night of Sukkot, and that night the Baal Shem Tov, through his prayers, changed the decree. How? The condition was that if the prosecutor himself, if the student who thought such bad thoughts about his friend would give his friend the benefit of the doubt and judge him favorably, the decree will get nullified. But how do you get that student to change his perspective of what happened in Rosh Hashanah? It was just a fleeting thought. So the Baal Shem Tov went into shul, and he sees that this student, who in his mind prosecuted the other students who sniffed the tobacco, he was in the middle of saying the tikkun of Hoshana Rabbah, and Hoshana Rabbah it's the custom to read Chumash Dvarim and to say all of Tehillim. And he was in the middle of reading Sefer Dvarim of Chumash. So the Baal Shem Tov removed his Gadlus HaMoichin, which means he was an extraordinary mind and a great spiritual soul, and the Baal Shem Tov removed his spiritual and intellectual capacity from him, so that this student could not continue reading the Chumash Dvarim on Hoshana Rabbah with the proper meditation and focus. So he started to walk around the shul just thinking about various things. Suddenly, as he's thinking, he starts thinking about the following question. Why is it that God allowed humanity to discover the tobacco in the last generations? It's certainly by divine providence that till the last generations, people were unaware of the tobacco grass, so they couldn't smell it or sniff the tobacco. Why is it? So he was thinking about it until he came up with the following conclusion, that it's possible that in these generations, there are floating around the world very fine souls that are not earthly. They're not concrete souls. They're like heavenly souls, otherworldly souls. And because of their fineness, they're incapable of enclothing themselves in a physical incarnation in earthly bodies. They're just too sublime for it. But these souls also have to be rectified. And they can't enclose themselves in bodies to live a life and learn Torah and observe mitzvahs and do good things. So how will these souls rectify themselves? So one needs a special avodah. Other souls have to rectify them through a special avodah, through a special work, which is also very fine and not something concrete, not something tangible, which touches the soul. What is that? It's smelling. The Gemara says in Brachas, Daf Mem Gimel, Ezo davar shaneshama nenis mimenu ve'ena guf nenis mimenu havarim zeireach. Aroma is something that the soul enjoys. It's not so much a bodily experience, it's more of a soulful experience. Ishei reach nichoyach laHashem. It was an aroma for God, the pasuk says. Aroma is a very, very fine sense and a very, very fine experience which affects the soul in a very deep place. By the way, parenthetically, in other Hasidic Svarim, there's the explanation why the great tzaddikim, Baal Shem Tov, Rabbi Yitzchak Baditchev, the Rebbe Melech of Lezhensk, the Heilige Rebbe Yisrael Rishner, and other great tzaddikim used to sniff tobacco regularly. So it says in Svarim of Hasidus that we have in the world very fine divine sparks that have to be sublimated, but they can't be sublimated through eating. They can't be sublimated through drinking, which is the usual method of how we sublimate the sparks in the world. Only through smelling reach. And this is how they explain what it says in Gemara. We say it each morning. Maila Ashon Kolshu. Literally, it means that in the Ketores and the incense they prepared in the Beis HaMikdash, which generated a tremendous aroma every day, there were different ingredients. There were 11 categories of incense. And the Mishnah says, that Chris is Davav, Maila Ashon Kolshu. They also had to put in something which generated a lot of smoke. In Chassidus, there's an explanation. Maila Ashon Kolshu, through Ashon, through a smoke, which means through aroma, you can even you can elevate and sublimate even a kolshu, even a divine spark, which is very fine. It's intangible. It's not concrete. It's kolshu. You can elevate through Ashon, through smell. When the Baal Shem Tov student was thinking and meditating about this concept, he remembered what happened on Rosh Hashanah when he felt very angry about his friend who dropped his container of tobacco and then lifted it up and sniffed in the middle of davening. So this student started to feel remorse over his negative feelings towards his friend. And he thought to himself, who knows what a precious and holy soul my friend sublimated to holiness by sniffing the tobacco Rosh Hashanah during davening. Hoshayna Rabbi, the system in Mezhebush by the Baal Shem Tov was that during the day the Baal Shem Tov was in a very positive and happy mood, so to speak. And he used to respond to all the questions that people asked him. Gemara, Halacha, Kabbalah, Chassidus, all types of questions. This student went over to the Baal Shem Tov Hoshayna Rabbi and he asked him the question that he was thinking about the night before, when he couldn't think straight and learn Chumash, so therefore he was thinking about all these various thoughts, he was daydreaming. So he asked the Baal Shem Tov, why is it that the phenomenon of sniffing tobacco was revealed in the last few generations? And the Baal Shem Tov told him, I want you to answer this question. So he told his Rebbe what he was thinking about it. So the Baal Shem Tov told him, tell us now the other things you were thinking about. So the Talmud said, the student said that he was also thinking about that he regrets profoundly the fact that he felt so angry and he had a kpeda towards his friend on Rosh Hashanah. When the Baal Shem Tov heard this, he revealed to him the whole story from beginning to end, and he told him that as a result of judging this person favorably on Hoshayna Rabbah and verbally communicating it, he nullified the decree on this Jew, and the Baal Shem Tov forewarned him that when it comes to your friend, when it comes to another person, another human being, you should dana sa'adam lekaf schus, as long as you're not sure beyond any shadow of a doubt that this person was guilty and had ill intent, judge them favorably. And who can ever be 1,000% sure? The only way we could be sure is if we spoke to them already and we rebuked them and we're sure that they understood everything we said, and nonetheless they continue to do it again, even though they really, really got and agreed with what we said. How can you be sure of that? The Chofetz Chaim writes famously that today there's nobody who knows how to be mechiach somebody else, to the extent that you could say that they really internalized it and accepted it, and now if they do it again, there's evil intent. And this is how the Baal Shem Tov interpreted the pasuk in Parshas Mishpatim. It says in Parshas Mishpatim, Al tashes yadchem rasha liyas eid chamas. Don't place your hand with a wicked person to serve as a false witness. What does this mean? Literally, the pasuk is saying, as the Even Ezra explains, as the Siparnoi explains, that you should not assist a false witness to go testify with him. If there's a false witness testifying against somebody, don't assist him. From a spiritual and psychological point of view, the Baal Shem Tov explained it in a very different way. He said as follows: when Satan goes up to heaven and starts speaking and spewing information against the Jewish people, his words of negativity against the Jew have no value. Why? Because Satan is a single witness. And in Torah there's a famous principle, Al Pi Shnayim Eidim Yakum Davar. Everything must be established based on two witnesses. So what does Satan do? He waits and he anticipates with bated breath till another Jew says something bad about his or her friend, gossips about his or her friend. So now he has a second witness. So he takes this information that the other Jew said about his friend. He takes this information, he collects it, he records it, and together with him we have two witnesses. Now you have two witnesses in heaven. This has an effect. So this is how the Baal Shem Tov explained the pasuk. Al tashas yatchim rasha liyis eit chamas. Don't join hands with a Rasha to be a false witness. In other words, don't join forces with the Satan. Don't wrap your hand around him and become a partner with him in crime. Don't talk evil or negatively about another Jew, because as a result of that, you are going to be turned in to an Eid Chamas, to a witness who, together with the Yetzer Hara, is bringing down another human being. Even if you have to rebuke the behavior, and even if you have to chastise the negative act, the Baal Shem Tov said, don't condemn the human being, only that particular act, and remember always to judge a person favorably. Have a wonderful evening. Okay, we'll take a few questions that came in from the audience. What do you do if there's a person who repeats the same act over and over again? How could you perform this commandment of judging them favorably? Well, you have to distinguish between judging the person favorably and condoning the act. Havei danas kol adam l'kav zchus doesn't mean that I believe that everything is good. Whatever you do is positive and ethical and moral. This is not about moral relativism, that there's no standard of right and wrong, and whatever you do is good, is truth. Rather, this is about how we define the person and the motivation behind this act or these words. The act may be unjust. The question is, what was the motivation? Was the motivation evil, that the person simply has conscious evil in them that they're interested in pursuing and expressing? Or was the motive something else? I can judge them favorably and meritoriously. So even if a person repeats something and has a certain pattern, I could still judge them favorably unless I am absolutely aware that this person's motivations are negative. And the only way I can be, how can I be aware? I don't know what's happening in your insides. Think about yourself. There are things that we do that are often negative, or things that we say. But we often know that deep inside there was like an innocence. And maybe we didn't realize, or we were insecure, or we were scared. Not necessarily that there was evil there, that there was conscious evil. So think about it. Think about it in myself and yourself. Can we really, really know the motivations of another person? The only way is if you spoke to them and you are certain that they understood it the way you understand it, so they are convinced just like you that this is wrong, and nonetheless they went and continued it. This is a hard type of conversation, to the point that they really agree with you, because if they don't agree with you, or they don't see it from your perspective or your perception, their motivation is still not evil. And remember that the more we judge somebody favorably, the easier it is actually to fix it afterwards. Because it's much easier to communicate with them and they're far less defensive. Next question. Does this apply to non-Jews as well? Well, it's an interesting question. I believe yes. My proof is, there's a famous Taisvis in Yevamis that when it says Adam, it refers to the Jew. When it says Ha-Adam, it refers to all people. Here the Mishnah says, have they done as Kol Ha-Adam L'Kafschus. So it refers to all people. Every person we should judge favorably. So I would assume it refers to everybody. I mean, I didn't research it specifically, but since it says the word Ha-Adam, so this is what I would assume. We'll take one more question if there is. What is the source of this interpretation of the Baal Shem Tov that when every Jew faces heaven after his or her life, the verdict that is conferred upon him is given by him himself? What is the source of it? Well, it's the Baal Shem Tov's idea. This is a Hasidic idea that was revealed through the Baal Shem Tov, like many other great ideas of Hasidus. The first written source I mentioned is from Likutei Maharan, which is the magnum opus of Reb Nachman of Breslov, who was a great-grandchild of the Baal Shem Tov, and one of the very well-known, fascinating Hasidic masters of his time, who is interred famously in the city of Uman in the Ukraine. And many people, Breslov Hasidim and others, go visit his holy resting place. And in his book, Likutei Maharan, he quotes this. As I explained before from the Rebbe, how this idea is essential to the ideas of Hasidus, about what a Jew is and what a soul is. Have a wonderful evening.